Thank you very much. I don't know about you, but I'm having a great time. It's my first time in Portugal and in Porto. It's really fun. I'm sure that you're having lots of fun too. But I'm going to talk about something that's not so fun, and that's the 8 most common ways to hack a WordPress website. Basically, that's based on our statistics. Right now, we host something like 100,000 WordPress websites. So we have a lot of expertise and experience with attacks towards those WordPress sites. I'll show you 3 live demonstrations how to hack a WordPress website based on different types of vulnerabilities and exploits, and I'll explain to you how to defend from those attacks. At the end of the presentation, you see a link, and that's everything you need to know about how to protect your website. So don't take any notes or anything, because you later see the presentation. Okay, so before we begin, I would like to say a few words about myself. I have 7 years and a little bit more of WordPress experience, and not only WordPress. I also do Drupal and Joomla development and a little bit of Magento. So I have been with SiteGround for the last 5 years, and I really love open source software. So basically, in SiteGround, we use open source for everything. You mean our internal systems, everything is based on open source. Of course, we patch everything ourselves, so it's a little bit different. We just don't download something and install it. And I'm also addicted to extreme sports that are not so secure. So my next slide is about why should you care about security. So for example, with snowboarding, it's really fun. And when I started to do snowboarding, I didn't think that I need some protection gear, helmets or something like that. But one day on the slopes, another guy hit me. So then I realized that that's important. It's the same with your website. You really have to realize that no matter what you think, there is always someone out there who would like to hack your website. And why do they do that? They do it because their only purpose is to send spam emails and to post spam comments on your blogs so that they can be able to advertise products and other sites. That's a really huge business right now. There are companies that are offering that kind of services on the black market. The first and most popular hack is an outdated WordPress core. The statistics show that 8 of the last 10 minor releases of WordPress are security releases, which means that 80% of those sites were vulnerable at the time the releases were released. So right now, with the new WordPress versions, we hope that those problems will be removed, because as you know, the new versions will be auto-updated if you don't opt out from that functionality. And to prevent that, we created our own system at SiteGround, which basically updates all the websites before 3.7. You can opt out from it, you can disable it, but before WordPress released their system, we were able to update tens of thousands of sites based on our own system. The solution for the first and most important problem is update, update, update. You have no excuses. Let's be honest, if your site is outdated, then why are you using WordPress? You have to think about it. There are so many new features and so many new goodies in the new versions. Don't just stay with the old version. If you have a template or a plugin which doesn't work with the old version, book the developer. He has to change the code so that he can be compatible. The second problem is outdated plugins and themes. Recently, I saw the following research by Checkmarks. They tested the top 50 plugins on WordPress, and the most popular 50 plugins, 20% of them are vulnerable to SQL injections, cross-site scripting, and other web attacks. So 20% of the 50 most popular plugins. You can imagine how many websites is that. 20% of the internet is WordPress, and 20% of the most popular plugins. A few notable examples. The first one is a Symptom PHP security vulnerability. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with it. You can raise your hands. Pretty much 50% of the people right here. According to Google, for those of you who don't know, Pimpton PHP is a PHP script, a plugin by Google which creates thumbnails. And many of the WordPress themes that were vulnerable are using it by default. So if you search for Pimpton PHP on Google, you see that 39 million sites use Pimpton PHP. That's not WordPress sites, that's 39 million sites. But 20% of 39 million sites is a lot. The other notable example from last Christmas is the W3 Total Cache vulnerability. So the W3 Total Cache vulnerability is right now fixed with the current release of the extension. It's a great extension. It can really speed up your website. But that extension allowed hackers to actually go, type your domain name, /W3 Total Cache, DB Cache, and after that see the files that have been created if database cache is enabled in W3 Total Cache. And right now, I will make a live demonstration of that vulnerability with an outdated version of W3 Total Cache. Just 2 seconds. So that right here is a WordPress website. It's a default website. I just need to see that. So we can type W content, W total cache, DB cache. Right here, you can see the folders, and every folder has a file which has been created by W3 Total Cache. So for example, if I access my administrator account, in one of those folders, you can browse them one by one, download every single file. That's the vulnerability, you can see everything. You will see my username, my administrator username, which is admin for this site for the purposes of the presentation. And you'll also see the MD5 salted hash of the password. So what I can do is to open this file. I have already opened it right here because I really don't have the time to browse through all the directories. But it looks something like this. And right here, you can see user pass, and that's the hash. So what I can do now is to open the terminal. And in this terminal, I can use a command which is actually a program that will test this hash against so many combinations. The program is basically trying to figure out the password by using different combinations, and it's using something like 40,000 combinations per second. So it will need around 30 to 40 seconds to crack the hash. And the hash is just a line in this text file. So I run it, you wait some time, and you see that it's a really easy password in our case, because if it's a long password like 10 or 15 characters, I will need probably 2 or 3 hours to crack it, but it's possible. So while this is running, I'll tell you that you remember, most of you, the attack against WordPress and Joomla websites towards the login page. Many hosting companies were affected. We got hit during April, the beginning of April. So when this happened, we were able to block 92,000 IP addresses that were trying to access all of the WordPress sites on our server. As you can see, the password has been cracked. It's pass123. And as I said, that's a really simple password, but that's just the proof of concept. So what we did when we blocked the IP addresses, we thought to ourselves, We needed several hours to do that. We stopped the attack using web application firewall, but during those 2 or 3 hours, the attackers have most probably guessed some of the passwords. So what we did was to brute force our clients ourselves. And you'll be amazed that we found out that 40% of all the WordPress websites that we host are using simple passwords. So we changed all the passwords, sent them an email, let them know how to change the password, that they have to add CAPTCHA on their website, and limit the number of login attempts, limit the IP addresses that they can access the login page, and everything like that. What I would like to show you is that right now, of course, I can access the admin area with the login there, so that you can see I'm actually able to log in with password admin and with password 1, pass123, and the admin username. Yeah, I mean, the resolution is not so good, but you can see that I'm in the administrative area of the site. So let's go on with the presentation. The next and also very important vulnerability is when everything is updated, but you're still vulnerable. So how is this possible? Maybe that's familiar for some of you. 8 out of 10 sites included base64 encoding in their themes. Siobhan made a research and Googled for free themes and plugins on Google. So 8 of the sites that were on the first page of Google were offering themes with encoded PHP code. And those themes should not be installed by any of you. And also the plugins, because they usually have links to other sites or spam comments or whatever you can think of. So to resolve this problem, you always have to download plugins and themes from trusted developers. You know, of course, that the plugin directory is that kind of source, and all the themes are reviewed that are uploaded on the official WordPress site. So never just search for a theme, download it, and test it. That's basically a problem that you create yourself. To resolve those issues, you should also use web application firewall. What is a web application firewall? Many of you most probably have heard of mod security. It's a module for the Apache web server, and that module is able to block many of those attacks that I mentioned. So for example, if you have a WordPress site and it's vulnerable to the W3 total cache attack, your plugin may be not updated, but you can create a security rule in this module and say block all the requests that are trying to download those types of files. You analyze the request to your website, and once you do that, you can easily remove those requests and say, hey, that's not going to reach my website. If you don't have someone who can do it for you, or your hosting company says that it's impossible to support it, first of all, switch hosting companies. And second, you can enable Cloudflare or Encapsula. They're content delivery networks, but they're different from the other content delivery networks because they offer security features. They analyze the traffic going through their networks, and they're able to filter malicious requests. It works like 60 to 70% of the time, because sometimes they just don't have the time to analyze enough requests. But if you can use Cloudflare or Encapsula, it's really easy. They have free plans. You just go to their site, create an account, and you point your domain name to their DNS servers. After that, they handle the traffic, and once they filter the bad request, all the legitimate requests are forwarded to your web server. The fourth most popular thing is weak login details. So how many of you have ever used username admin for a website? Don't be shy, raise your hand. I've also used it. The truth is, you suck. I suck too. I do it, I still do it, and I'm trying to get rid of that habit. So keep calm, let me show you how easy it is to log into a WordPress site that's using weak passwords. So the W3 total cache vulnerability allowed me to access the site because I had access to the username and also to the MD5 hash of the password. But what if I don't have this information? If I don't have this information, I can create a PHP script, and the PHP script simulates a normal login. It accesses your website, and after that uses CURL to try to log in with certain usernames and passwords. That's called a dictionary attack. So you can imagine a list of 10,000 passwords. You can Google right now for the most popular 10,000 passwords. You download a text file, and you can use this text file to tell your script, hey, use those passwords with username admin, for example. So if you're using username admin, or you know that the victim is using his name or his dog's name as a username, you can try different combinations with so many passwords. And the chance, as I said, is that 40% of those websites will be hackable. So again, I will show you one script which does this exact thing. Where's my terminal? There it is. The tool is a simple bash script. I can show it to you later if you're interested. But what it does is it calls a PHP script, and the PHP script goes through a text file with passwords. So once I run it, oops, there we go. The same password, that is pass123, I cracked it like 10 times faster because I'm not trying to decrypt the password that is encrypted. I'm just trying to log in with that password. There is a really easy solution. It's to limit the number of login attempts or install CAPTCHA on your website so that people will not be able to access it so easily. Another thing that you should do, of course, change the username admin. I'm using it just for the purposes of the presentation, but you can change it with this SQL query. If you have phpMyAdmin on your hosting account, or you have SSH access, that's the query you should use. And you can use something like your name, some special characters, admin, or something else. That's really, really much more secure than just a single word. For your passwords, my own recommendation is you can use, for example, one of your favorite quotes. How many people will know that? Except for your wife or your girlfriend? No one else. And when it's so long and there are so many spaces, it's practically impossible to dictionary attack that. I can do it, but I will need like 300 light years to hack your website. The other thing that you can do right now to protect your website is to get free of malware. Secure your local computers. Always keep your operating system and programs updated. Install antivirus software. That's common sense. Come on, you should do it. If you're not doing it, then something is wrong. You don't have the time, or your local system administrator sucks, or something like that. Always use HTTPS connections to websites when it's possible. And don't use FTP. Always use FTP over SSH or FTP over an SSL certificate. Because if I'm a hacker and I live next to you and I want to steal your login details, I can just attach to the network and use a network sniffer to see your login details for the FTP account in plain text. I have a question right now before I proceed with the rest of the presentation. How many of you are managing your own servers? Okay, so the next part of the presentation is a little bit more complex because it's about server software and vulnerabilities that affect the whole server. So if you want to learn something more, you can catch up with me later. I'll explain to you. So what's vulnerable server software? When I first heard that, I was like, that boy. And right now, if you have seen it, it says, what you talking about? So you go somewhere and purchase a WordPress hosting from a hosting company that advertises they're familiar with WordPress and everything like that in your site, works awesome, and it's the latest version, and everything's the latest version, is suddenly you're hacked. So those are the 3 vulnerabilities for the last 2 years that affected hundreds of thousands of servers. The first one is 1 year old. It's related to PHP CGI, and it affects the versions that are before 5.3.12 and 5.4.2. The vulnerability allows me to execute PHP code on the server without any access to the server, and I'll show it to you right now. The second one allows me to access your database if you have enabled remote access to your database without knowing your password. So I just tried to log in 500 times, and eventually the MySQL server tells me, okay, you can log in, that's it. Because they just didn't invalidate the input. So the MySQL server that thinks that eventually the password is correct. That was huge vulnerability. And the last one is the Apache range header denial of service attack, which allowed so many people to attack a server, and none of the sites on this server are responsible because they're spawning like 100 processes that are trying to just handle one single request. They're just staying there, the processes, and thinking, and the sites are unresponsive. The way to resolve this is to always update server software, follow security bulletins, or hire professional sysadmins. And if you don't have the time to do it, find someone, a hosting company or a developer design agency that will host your website for you, and you don't have to care about that they know what they're doing. So for example, at SiteGround, every Monday we have a security team, I'm on it, and we dedicate like 6 to 8 hours to go through all the security bulletins and all the news to inform ourselves if something new is coming. And if there is a new vulnerability, for example for Apache, we are not waiting for the Apache Foundation to release a new version because they may need 3 days to do it. We do it ourselves. We have C++ programmers that actually contribute to the Linux kernel, and they pretty much understand how Apache works. Right now, I don't think that I have enough time, but I'll try to really fast show you about this vulnerability with PHP CGI and how it works. So let's say that I would like to access WP config PHP. Of course. No, it's not found because I forgot this folder right here. Blank page. As you can see, that's pretty normal. No one is going to show you any information when you do it. But if I type this, what do I see? The PHP code. And what do I see here? Your database. Your database password. It's pretty complex, but I still see it. And right now, if you have remote access to the MySQL server, I can log in, and from there I can do pretty much anything. We can also change this vulnerability a little bit. I'm not sure that we can do it right now. I don't have time to do it right now, but instead of the -s option, which shows you the source code, I can type -d and actually send some PHP code to the server. And on my Mac, I can open a terminal which will be waiting for incoming connections, for example, or certain port. And when I execute the PHP shell script, when I go to my terminal, I will have full access to the server. So I will be able to hack not only this site, but the whole server. I will have root access, I can change the keys, the SSH keys, and the system administrator of this server will not be able to log in. I will be the new system administrator of the server. The next thing is incorrectly configured server, and what I mean is that, again, you should have someone who should be able to configure everything for you so that it works flawlessly. Here's something that many people do not know. That's not a bug in the Apache web server, that's a feature. You can by default create a symbolic link from your public HTML, for example, some text file, to another account on the same server. and that can be a WordPress install, and this WordPress install will be perfectly healthy, an updated site. And if the web server is not configured properly, I can create a symlink from my account. If I'm a hacker, I go and purchase an account, create it just for the purpose of hacking everybody else's sites on that server, create a symlink, and I will have the output of this configuration file. And the solution is to simply add this to the configuration of the Apache web server. So if the system administrator is not experienced, you have yourself a hacked website. Find a good host or hire professional sysadmins. That's something you should remember. The last thing that I'll be talking about is wrong permissions and isolation. I'm sure that you have all seen this thing like 7554 folder, 644 for files, and if you would like additional click of security, 444 for your configuration file. The problem with that is that many people don't understand that even with those permissions, you're still hackable. And why is that? Because most of the people are hosted on shared hosting servers. And one thing which is obligatory for shared hosting servers is isolation. If I don't have isolation on my shared hosting server, those permissions mean that I can read anybody else's files. Basically, this phone number tells that all the users on the server can read this file. The right way to do it is to use server management software like 1H Hive or Cloud Linux or Jail Shell, so you can isolate accounts. And only the owner of the files can read those files. There are two SSH commands here that you can use to change the permissions of your files and folders recursively. So you don't have to do it manually via FTP or a file manager or something like that. To sum up everything, I would like to give you some general guidelines. Always use secret keys. You can visit this URL to create secret keys for your configuration file of WordPress so that everything will be sorted. Like for example, if I don't add secret keys to my configuration file, the passwords in WordPress will not be sorted, and I can go and just change the password with MD5 hash. Move the WP config PHP file to the previous folder, to the parent folder. By default, the WordPress application, it checks the previous folder for your configuration file. If it doesn't find it in your public HTML, it will check your home folder, and the site will still work. But the file itself will not be accessible via browser. So that's really important. I will not be able to see your MySQL login details if the file is outside of the public HTML folder. Use SSL for your login pages and for your administration. To do this, you can just add SSL true in your configuration file and allow access to your WP admin folder just from certain IP addresses. So, questions?
Hi.
Hi.
Do you host only Apache servers, or do you Nginx something?
We host Apache servers, and by default, in front of the Apache servers, we have Varnish, which is highly customized. And right now, we will be launching servers with Nginx. Yes. By default, all of the WordPress sites on our servers are using Varnish for caching all the static content, like CSS file, JavaScript, and images. And we also have our own plugin for WordPress, which allows you to use Varnish and WordPress natively.
Hi, my name is Vasco, and I would like to add and ask a few things regarding this. First one is a measure I found out usually great for creating passwords that most crackers forget. It's about using foreigner characters while using your passwords. So, for instance, you have Latin language, you have certain characters that don't make part of the usual tables for the hash key.
Yeah.
And if you use those kind of characters, most of password crackers won't try to use them while trying to crack your password.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct.
Like German characters, the train. Just wanted to add this one to the give a little hint for a way to stop it. Another way, well, if you use Linux, you don't need an antivirus. So that's another. Just one other question regarding the lots of these hacking things that people use, like massive testing and all stuff. There are lots of other tools inside already in WordPress that you can use to increase security regarding the inputs of the user. So I think a lot of times people don't use those functions already available, and that's another extra where you can increase the security of your site even after people log in sometimes.
Yeah, that's correct. By the way, when we install WordPress on our servers, and I think that most of the hosting companies should do it. For example, we use Spectaculous for one-click installs. We have custom packages, and for example, our package comes with pre-enabled number of login details. So if you are not able to log in with 3 attempts, you will be blocked. Your IP address can also be whitelisted during the installation. You can just type one IP address. And those things should be included, at least I think so, by default, and you should have the option to enable them while you're installing WordPress.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. And one thing that I forgot to say is the biggest threat of all are the hackers who are using databases. So what I mean is that 99% of the kids out there are just using scripts downloaded from the internet to try to hack your website. But the problem is that serious hackers, they have a database. For example, today I would like to scan 100,000 WordPress sites, and I will see that 80% of them are version 3.7.1. Right now, those sites are not vulnerable. But 3 months from now, if a security release comes up, I will not have to scan them again. I will have a database with all the sites and I will know their version. So at that moment, I practically have myself a zero-day vulnerability because I can launch the attack the minute I see there is a vulnerability. So that's why you should care about security. Don't assume that someone is going to protect your website out of the blue and someone will try to hack it like 3 months after a vulnerability is released. It's an ongoing process. You cannot secure your site today and leave it like that for tomorrow. You should do it every day. And as I said in the beginning of the presentation, at the last slide will be a link that you will not need to know anything else about security. My purpose here today was not to show you how to hack a site. I cannot teach you how to protect your site, but I can teach you to care about security. So the only thing you should know, that's the link you can get the presentation. So think about it when you go home and open it. Open again the presentation. Try to assimilate one more time what I've just said and try to come up with a habit that you have to care about security.
I also found useful to move WP content directory to something else, and also change the base WordPress installation, so it never looks like WordPress / WP login.
Basically,
it's something else.
The folder structure is different, right? That's what you're saying. It moves it so you cannot guess it's a WordPress site.
Yeah,
that's also really
attacks I see on the logs usually go to the specific WP content, WP login of PHP. So if you change that, most of the attacks is going to fail. Most of them, at least.
Yeah, I think that's also really useful. But as I've said, I cannot list everything. So go to communities that care about security, share your ideas, and educate more people. Because people nowadays don't care about security, and that's really the big problem.